I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the whine, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. And if it snows, that stretch down south won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. Still on the line. And I'm doing fine.
All right, thank you. I hope you're having a great Sunday. This track won't fucking end, but that was Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell and the Stone Temple Pilots. And today we're going to talk a little bit about free speech on the internet. And I hope that you did get to watch that entire thing, because for some reason it says that the streams have been live for only about 30 seconds. So I guess let me know in the chat if you can hear me. We have Lennon McCarthy's here, of course. And obviously, if you've been paying attention to YouTube and terms of conditions lately, I don't think this channel is going to be it's going to be live for very much longer. Unfortunately, there you see I snipped a video for the thumbnail, but we're going to go through a number of topics today relating to freedom of speech and the consequences of exercising that speech. And unfortunately, as someone who is more to the libertarian side on most issues, especially issues of civil liberties, it really does get obvious, very obvious at many points, that even if human beings they tend to want as much freedom as they can and as much control as they can over their lives, the world is not a libertarian world, because one person's freedoms and desires conflict with other people's. So individualism while I think it is the least intrusive way of relating to society, is not something that can be empirically imposed on the people. So I guess just started. Okay, so I guess you missed the music. Maybe we'll play the music at the end. Doesn't matter. I can't believe that it just started. So anyway, sorry about that, but we are going to move kind of fast today because, as you can see, I'm wearing my Sunday best, and we're playing Detroit today. Pretty crucial game. I don't think we'll talk too much about NFL today. Maybe later in the afternoon after the Cowboys game. By the way, we are going to talk a little bit about the Colin Kaepernick situation because it does relate to freedom of speech. Twitter was going wild in the past couple of days because Barack Obama, former president of the United States, claimed that Democrats should tamp down their progressive ambitions because they're being too far left and they're not being realistic. And people really went nuts. Especially, so this is Common Dreams. Common Dreams is a really, really far left extremist website. They are far left on climate, on immigration, on virtually any topic. But especially, I know it because I did a number of stories on the climate recently, and they're supporters of Extinction Rebellion and the Sunrise Movement and all of those organizations that I would say are fundamentally they're extremist organizations. They don't really believe in the rule of law at all. They don't believe in individual rights either. They're pretty much these, I guess you could call them environmental fascists. So Twitter's left-wing group, they reacted to it saying, so this is Peter Dow. In 2016, he was a Hillbot. He was calling literally every person who disagreed with Hillary Clinton a Russian troll or something like that. Now he's defected to the Bernie camp, and he's become such a big Bernie fan that he's compensating for all the time that he attacked Sanders in 2016. And he said, too far left. I launched the too far left tag because I've had it with Republicans, media elites, and corporate Dems enabling fascists while denigrating those who seek economic and social justice as too far left. I like to once hear them complain about America as too far right. Well, get off your fucking high horse, Peter, because for the last, it's been longer than the past 3 years, in fact. I remember since my childhood, America has attacked people, whether they are or aren't far right, as far right people. They've attacked people who, even people I disagree with by mislabeling them as far right. People like President Bush. I wouldn't say President Bush was far right. I'd say he was a horrible president. I'd say he was an oligarch. I'd say he was a person who was wedded to the interests of his father and the CIA and a number of oil companies and the interests of neoconservatism and intervening in the Middle East. I would not call him a far-right individual. I think much of that had to do with his views on marriage. And I'm sorry, but if you think that his views on marriage are far-right, then you disagree with the majority of California voters who voted against extending marriage rights to same-sex couples in 2008, and therefore you would be far left. So the definition of what's extreme is defined not by journalists and corporations that tell people what to think. It's defined by what the people are expressing. That's why you do consumer surveys. That's why, and this is my take from the world of business. I think the world of business, if you're looking at stuff like the recent Sprite commercial, they're ignoring their customer base. They're basically telling them, look, these are the values that we support, and we're going to print them on our product. And therefore, when you consume our product, you endorse our values. That's not something I subscribe to. And as someone who believes in market justice, I'd say that it's a good idea if you don't buy Sprite, because Sprite is promoting values that I would say are just, why should a corporation be promoting transsexualism? It doesn't make sense to me. I would say that that's something that's more up to people who are in a theory, people who will debate it on a biological level. Some people might debate it on a psychological level. Did I say psychology, biology, and probably in the field of law, right? So why should a corporation that's marketing soda be determining gender politics? And Lennon McCarthy, who's in the chat, yeah, he's right. Trans kid pushes child abuse. So there's a couple other interesting takes here. I'll paste this into the chat if you want to check it out. Yesterday I recorded a video for this, but I didn't do quite a good job, so I'm just doing a live right now. So you can read the rest of these. But there was one that actually validates Barack Obama's point, which is Cynthia Nixon saying, she said, "Oh, Barry," and she's giving an exasperated emoji. Cynthia Nixon's reaction to this is exactly what shows that they don't learn their lesson. Obviously, Barack Obama, I didn't support him as president, but I think that in terms of being, I guess, the symbol of I guess, leftism on the globalist level, he did a very good job of, I guess, keeping his shit together. He wasn't someone who seemed to fall apart and fly off the handle a lot. Now, I think that there's a few incidents that the media suppressed. In fact, there's one report, I think, from early in his administration that he actually cussed out a reporter and it never got to print. But Cynthia Nixon, who is the former co-star of Sex and the City and former gubernatorial candidate for governor of New York, is frustrated that Barack Obama is saying that the Democrats are going too far left. But Cynthia Nixon is an excellent exhibit of why that's true, because you can see, so New York, we'll type that in right now. So from 2018, you can actually see, so she earned in a state that's overwhelmingly Democratic, running far to the left of Governor Cuomo, who was not a popular governor. She got absolutely blasted in the primary, 65% to 35%. Okay? And Impacts is saying current lesbian. Yeah, she ran basically. Now I don't care if she wants to be gay and she wants to be governor and people in New York accept that. I don't care. But she was running as the lesbian candidate, right? So as a lesbian candidate, as the one demanding that New York get even more into the tax and waste cycle, and calling for Medicare for all on the state level, which is much more difficult than on the federal level because states do have to meet budget constraints. They don't have the same. A state, for example, the state of Maryland doesn't have sovereign debt, right? They can't just go to the IMF and request loans. They can't go to the government of China or to Monaco or the Vatican and ask them for more money. They would have to ask the federal government for it. So effectively, what that means is that she was campaigning on the notion that New York should pass Medicare for all in order that New York would have to borrow money from the rest of the country in order to pay for it. That's basically what it means. Or they would have to tax the living shit out of every high earner in New York State, which would accelerate the exodus of New York residents for Florida. As you probably know, New York is losing tons and tons of residents every year for the state of Florida. So yeah, that's an indication of, yeah, she went too far left. She got destroyed in that election, and that's by Governor Cuomo, who was not even a very good candidate. And she even lost by a margin that was above the polling. And think about that. The liberal pollsters predicted she would lose by 63 to 22 or 63. They had various, vote shares. There was even one that said 50 to 28. And Andrew Cuomo blew that out of the water. And Cynthia Nixon got just destroyed. And she wants to complain about Barack Obama saying this. I have to say that as much as I don't agree with Cuomo, I think Cuomo is a far left governor too. This is the perfect example of why too far left is a thing. We also have this issue with, so these are people who are saying, well, nobody should tell us how far left we can go. Well, the market told you that. The polls told you that. The votes told you that. And that's really what I call market justice. But then there's a different type of freedom of speech where you're actually beholden to a set of values that maybe you don't agree with. That's what happened with Don Cherry last week, and he was fired by Sportsnet in Canada. He was the co-host of Hockey Night in Canada, and his co-host Ron MacLean threw him under the bus. And originally he nodded to his expressions. He made some sort of tirade about people not wearing poppies, and the implication was he was talking about immigrants, and he was fired from Hockey Night in Canada. And the way that this ends is that they're saying, Sportsnet said it plans to take the long-running segment in a new direction. Founding host of Hockey Night in Punjabi, Paraminder Singh, said he sees Cherry's ouster as a moment for growth. I think this is an opportunity for Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada to set the tone that's truly reflective of the diverse viewership of hockey. That is the wrong way to go about it, and I don't have as much time today as I did yesterday to try to articulate what I want to say, but when you're talking about sports, especially sports broadcasting, you always want someone who is, A, has a colorful personality, and B, whose personality is tied to the game. So when you see on, obviously I don't like Chris Collinsworth, but Chris Collinsworth had a long career as a wide receiver in the NFL. And then you have Al Michaels, who's a classic broadcaster, right? That's on Sunday Night Football. In baseball for many years, they had Joe Morgan and John Miller. That was a great team because you had Joe Morgan, who'd been on the Reds for many, many years, and John Miller, who has like a golden voice. So that's the way you do it. You don't add anything by adding only personality or only diversity. And that's what happened when they added to Monday Night Football. And this is the opposite case. They added Dennis Miller, who's more of a conservative pundit. And he was a huge dud. A lot of his jokes had more to do with pop culture than they did with anything to do with football. I think even he might have even made a Chomsky joke. So that fell completely flat. You want a person who's into hockey in order to complement Ron MacLean, right? And especially if it's Coach's Corner, you might even want just people who are completely into hockey and not as much into politics. Now, obviously, Don Cherry said something that was a little political, and you don't necessarily have the freedom at the workplace to say whatever you want. But the idea that you can just fill that void by putting in someone based on either their color or their background or their gender is completely nonsense. It doesn't have anything to do with Hockey Night in Canada. Hockey Night in Canada has to have a host who has the credibility of having a long, long career in hockey or hockey broadcasting. Don Cherry, he was a coach back in the days when there was the Colorado Rockies of the NHL. That was before they moved to Jersey and they became the New Jersey Devils. He coached even before that. He was a player. He knows all of the classic, some of these Bobby Orr era hockey references, things that people who have been watching the game for the past 50 to 60 years will pick up on. And that's what you want. So he's been watching the game for that long. He can pick up on all of the big stuff that's been happening since then. The Gretzky era, the Mario Lemieux era, Patrick Waugh, things like that. Nowadays you have Ovechkin. These are things that you can't just fill in by putting in some dude who happens to watch a few Canucks games every year. So that's really what's going on. You have this notion that, we're going to police speech, and then the people that we fire, we're going to fill in with people who are ideologically reliable, but who fill some sort of diversity requirement. No, that's not really. I mean, I guess there is a way to enforce speech requirements at the workplace, because freedom of speech does limit itself to the public space. It doesn't extend to the private space. Technically, I think Sportsnet is on CBC, so In Canada, I'm not sure what the freedom of speech laws are, but they do have the legal right to fire him. Viva Frei made a video about that, so you might want to check that out. It doesn't mean it was a good idea. I think it was a horrible idea, and I think long term the show is going to be it's going to be a dud. Even Ron McLean says Coach's Corner is no more after the Don Cherry firing. This is another case. So we're going to be going towards some of the two of the examples I have to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I know Arjun, who's one of my viewers, he wanted me to comment on that. This isn't really going to be directly commenting on that, but first we'll do this Jeff Garlin example where he apparently said. He said, I was saying some really stupid, silly things that I can't believe that anyone would find offensive, but to each his own. Talking about almost getting fired from the Goldbergs, which is a show that I've heard is kind of lame. So he said, every time I stand up on the set, I go, oh, my female genitalia, which probably means he was saying the C word. And he says, and I said to them, I understand that if I worked at an insurance office and there's a bunch of desks, that's inappropriate. But in a comedic atmosphere, it's stupid. They said, what if we fire you? And I said, I'd love to have it announced Jeff Garlin got fired for that. So that's a valid argument, I think, by Jeff Garlin, which is that if you're talking about a performer, whether it's a comedian or whether it is a person who is, let's say, a theater actor, right? And they're a person who their brand and the way that they deliver the lines is integral to the part. Why would you fire the person? Maybe you write them out of the part. If this, for example, this is a series, this is a sitcom, so maybe they can write him out of the part. That's what they did to Charlie Sheen, by the way. And there are still people who say that the show was never as good without Charlie Sheen. That was 2.5 Men. So I think that, yes, companies and corporations can impose free speech limits, and then they can you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Either you don't agree with freedom of speech and you want to police your employees, and therefore you screw with the business because you don't get people who are necessarily reliable in terms of the actual work, but they're reliable in terms of the speech that they're producing. Or you do believe in freedom of speech and you're willing to take a lot of criticism for things that your employees are saying. So, yeah, I am anti-Penguin. What are you going to do? I don't like Pittsburgh, but I mean the Penguins have had like seven or eight championships. So I mean you got to definitely respect the Pens. I've always been. I mean, in hockey, I don't have like necessarily a favorite team. I've always favored the Sharks. So take that for what you will. I'm probably not a big hockey fan like most of the people. I know Memes is from Boston. He's probably a Bruins fan, or he's from Massachusetts somewhere. With workout power move, Colin Kaepernick might have just waved goodbye last chance at an NFL job. So I'll briefly go through this. Plus, my game is coming on soon. So Colin Kaepernick had this workout that was scheduled by the NFL for Saturday. And unfortunately, the wires got crossed to such an extent that he decided that rather than go to the special workout that the NFL had booked the Atlanta Falcons Stadium for. I forget what the Falcons Stadium. I don't think it's the Georgia Dome anymore. But they booked a stadium and workout field so that he could work out in front of the scouts of as many NFL teams that would come. And apparently there were over 24 NFL teams that did send a representative to the stadium to watch this one guy play. Colin Kaepernick, who, if you're not from the U.S. or you're not into football or you've been living under a rock, is this football player. He's a quarterback who kneeled for the national anthem in 2016 in response to police citizen violence, specifically with the black community. And I didn't support Colin Kaepernick. I still don't support him. I never believed his protest was sincere. I think people who do believe that his protest is sincere, I think that they've made way too much of a crusade out of it because he hasn't accomplished anything. The only thing Colin Kaepernick has accomplished is to create a brand name for Colin Kaepernick that has nothing to do with football. Now, that's entirely his right, but it doesn't entitle him to be this constant topic of discussion for football fans. Because if you're a football fan, you want to discuss players who are actually playing the game, right? If you're a person who is a Tennessee Titans fan, you want to be concerned with the person who is on the field and not the person who is kneeling or who is protesting outside the stadium. So it fell completely flat with, I'd say, the vast majority of fans. Obviously, that there's a segment of fans that always supported Kaepernick or who were agnostic about the protest, and that's fine. And I don't really care if people want to support Kaepernick, also fine. I'm not really into telling other people what to believe. But yesterday, rather than show up at the practice facility for the Atlanta Falcons, about an hour before it was supposed to begin, he announced that they were going to boycott that workout with the NFL and hold a different one at a high school somewhere in suburban Atlanta that was a long drive away. And then, listen to this. He had a press conference where he bashed the NFL and called them out for trying to control the process and blackballing him and all of that, and saying that, I wanted my practice to be transparent so the media and the fans could actually see my capabilities. Now, in the event, Colin Kaepernick went to this protest. He went to this place, and you see him here. This is a gallery of it, and he did some throwing. And he's wearing a Kunta Kinte shirt on top of his long sleeve shirt and smiling like an idiot. Kunta Kinte, for those of you that are too young to remember, I mean, my dad actually had me watch Roots when I was a kid. I don't know why, because my dad's not exactly a very activist person at all. But Kunta Kinte was the name of the slave played by LeVar Burton in Roots back in 1978. So he's clearly sending a message that he believes that there is a very adverse employment arrangement for black people in the NFL. But remember, there are a lot of players in the NFL that are Samoan. What's his name? Manti Te'o is Samoan. He's not black. And there's a fair amount of players in the NFL that are white. So is he trying to say that the NFL is enslaving all of those players too? I don't think so. I think it's a complete and total virtue signal. So he was standing on this field throwing passes to receivers that were part of his workout team, and a bunch of you see this dude, this white guy in a Colin Kaepernick jersey showing up, and that's about it. And he's probably not going to play in the NFL. And I'll tell you why, because the NFL bent over backwards to arrange this for him. Apparently, Jay-Z was involved because he got guilted into it. And really, if you feel so strongly that you want to play football, you know what a lot of players who can't get an NFL job do? They go play in Canada for about 2 or 3 seasons, and maybe because they keep their skills fresh, they stay in the market. It's shown. They have film to show of them playing in an actual game for the past couple of years. That's the way that you stay relevant in the NFL, not by staging media stunts and trying to be antagonistic, because that's not the way that you show that you're sincere about wanting to return to the NFL, especially when the NFL sets up a workout for you to showcase your skills. So, yeah, I think that this is a case of keeping it real. When keeping it real goes wrong, as Dave Chappelle's skit shows. Yesterday, I was actually confronted by someone because of a comment I made to this story. And he didn't realize the irony of what he was saying. So this is a friend of mine. He is an explicitly Zionist person, but he's a Zionist person of the left, which is an endangered species nowadays. And as someone who has decided, I'm not going to force my opinion on anyone regarding the Middle East. I, of course, support my family, support I served in the IDF. I have cousins who are serving now there. I support the Israeli military over there. I don't believe in the foreign aid. I think that the foreign aid, as this article clearly states, could be used as a cudgel in order to force concessions from the Israelis. I don't believe in foreign aid in principle. I don't think that we should be sending foreign aid to Turkey or Israel or Pakistan or Iraq or any of those countries, South Korea, especially not South Korea. So South Korea is doing so well economically, there's no legitimate justification for foreign aid. So when I see this garbage where people are trying to say, all these Democratic leaders, they rushed to defend Israel's attack on Gaza. Warren was the only one to acknowledge Palestinian deaths. First of all, if you're a candidate and you have to say something that someone else approves of, then you're basically a puppet. But second of all, that's not exactly what happened. Pete Buttigieg says, any progress towards peace, let's see here, Israel has a right to defend itself against acts of terror that set back any progress toward peace, and it will only serve to inflame the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So, yes, technically, he doesn't express it the way that Mondo Weiss wants it, because Mondo Weiss is an explicitly anti-Zionist publication, which, by the way, is run by a couple of Jews here in the United States. But he does say, there's a humanitarian situation in Gaza. Steve Bullock, who I don't know why they even cite him, because nobody is going to vote for him, and he's a dead candidate. He's basically running in order to raise money for whatever. He says, I stand with Israel as terrorists backed by Iran fire rockets targeting innocent civilians. I support Israel's right to defend itself. So, yeah, they have a point that Steve Bullock, who is nominally a candidate for president, did not acknowledge Palestinian deaths. But who cares what Steve Bullock says? Michael Bennet, same idea, the senator from Colorado. Same idea. Rocket attacks against innocent civilians are unacceptable. Israel has the right to self-defense against attacks by terror groups in Gaza. De-escalation is the only path forward to peace and stability. Also, another person who doesn't matter. So they're highlighting, to lead off, they're highlighting one person who does acknowledge the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And two people that are a joke. Amy Klobuchar, who is basically a joke as well. Rocket attacks on Israel continue. My thoughts are with those living in fear and terror because of these attacks. The United States must continue to support Israel's security. So they're not going to vote for Amy Klobuchar anyway. So why would she cater to their vote? They don't support her in any case. So why do they care? Just vote for someone else. Nobody's going to vote for Amy Klobuchar anyway. Joe Biden also supported the Israeli side and didn't mention the Palestinians. Good. So if you don't like Joe Biden and he's not really doing particularly well now, support your candidate. And then, so Kamala Harris apparently didn't tweet anything. Bernie Sanders says Israel, so they leave out Bernie Sanders, and it says Israelis should not have to live in fear of rocket fire. Palestinians should not have to live under occupation and blockade. The U.S. must lead the effort to end the crisis in Gaza and the persistent violence that threatens anyone. So they're singling out Elizabeth Warren as the only person that they think is appropriately acknowledging the suffering in Gaza. But Bernie Sanders actually said that Palestinians should not have to live under occupation and blockade. So this is a flagrantly misleading article from Mondo Weiss. And my friend took me to task yesterday. He complained that I said that all of the Democratic candidates are useless pieces of shit. And none of their words mean anything anyway. That's what I commented on one of his posts, because he ran a page that I didn't even know he runs. And he thought that it was very divisive of me to say that, because at this time he thinks that everyone should stand united against Islamofascism. And I said to him, if you're following these candidates for real, that's not what they're saying at all. None of them really care about Islamofascism if that's what you think is the real issue. And if there's one candidate, by the way, who is against Islamic fascism, it is Tulsi Gabbard, the one candidate that's not mentioned here at all. Let me see, is she even quoted here? So they leave out Tulsi Gabbard, who is obviously the biggest lightning rod of a candidate. She is the only candidate. And I said it to him. I said I would be willing to vote for Tulsi Gabbard. Not to say that I'd be willing to vote for her for president necessarily, but in the primary for sure, because she's against the war with Russia. He got mad at me when I said that. And I said to him, Bernie Sanders, if your main concern is this issue of Islamo-nationalism, as he called it, why is Bernie Sanders having Linda Sarsour run around the country as his surrogate? He's having Rashida Tlaib as one of his surrogates. He's having Amr Zahar, who is a Hezbollah supporter, as his surrogate. All of those people are surrogates for Bernie Sanders. And you know what he said to me? He said that, well, Bernie Sanders isn't a serious candidate anyway. So there are people who are so delusional that they will share a Mondo Weiss article, which is anti-Israel, in order to sustain a pro-Israel point without actually reading it. And then when you criticize them, they actually, we're talking about freedom of speech here. He said to me in person that he didn't appreciate my comment, and then he couldn't defend the story that he was talking about. Let me see what's on the comments here. We're coming up to the last story, which is technically related to this. So, Elron Humperdinck. Bold as Arju. No, man. I belong to the Lord, Elron. You can't have me, buddy. Let me see. Pete Buttigieg. So you know what? Let me say something. Pete Buttigieg, I don't like him, but he is very smart because he's saying stuff that in a rational way, they don't seem to be like he's adhering to the Barack Obama playbook. You appear to be relatively rational, say things that are very sensible, don't get into hyperbolic situations, and therefore you appear to be the grown up in the room, even though he's, I think, the second youngest candidate. Pete Buttigieg is overachieving here. And I don't know if he's going to be the nominee, but he's actually leading in a couple of the Iowa polls now. And which, by the way, I think he's a person who has a very, very deep knowledge of polls. So Pete Buttigieg is really, he knows how to do this. And some of these other people have no friggin' clue, especially Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, who's been in politics for, probably 16 years longer than Peter Buttigieg, she has no clue how to do any of the stuff. And he's making it, just give him credit for his ability to campaign well and do stuff like that. That's all I'm saying. I would not vote for him, though. The guy is this disingenuous piece of shit. So, but you have to give people props when they're due. Larry's talking about Hunter S. Thompson. So there was a photo apparently in Larry's version of that book, which is a good book, although I wouldn't agree with the political premise of it because I think he demonized Richard Nixon, where Hubert Humphrey said, I was once a Jew myself. It wasn't in my version. So if you're buying a copy of it, Larry puts it out. Let me know if your version has it because mine didn't. Who else is here? Chris Kroll. Thanks, man. Thanks for joining in. So this is from the Jerusalem Post, and it refers to an issue. So for those of you that are saying, oh, you're putting a Zionist publication, well, this is to balance out. See, I put the Mondo Weiss, which is anti-Zionist, and now we're gonna get to PH0. So I mean, show some applause there. Clap your hands. By the way, like the video and the stream, and share the stream, and subscribe to me. Also, subscribe to me on BitChute, by the way, because like I said, I think I said in the beginning, this channel is not commercially viable. I'm not going to make any bones about it. So if I do have this channel disappear against my will, you can probably find me on BitChute. I probably won't post as much, but so you guys know where to find me if you want to. Facebook group helps labor members avoid expulsion over anti-Semitism. Now, let me set the issue here, okay? Like I said, I'm a freedom of speech absolutist. I think anyone should have freedom of speech. Flat earthers, Holocaust deniers, moon landing skeptics, people, anti-vaxxers. I believe in freedom of speech. When you join an organization that has speech guidelines and guidelines of what you're supposed to say, even if whether it's the Masons, whether it's working for a corporation, that goes out the window, because once you agree to those group's rules, your freedom of speech has been relinquished in the context of your activity with it. So if they decide, well, your activity in your private life that we've told you we're not going to be okay with, we can fire you over that. By the way, I support that in terms of if you're a corporation that says, well, we don't really like transsexuals, so we're not going to hire them. Why should that be illegal, right? If you're a transsexual, do you want to vote for a corporation that doesn't really appreciate transsexuals because the law says they have to hire you? I'm not sure that should be something that you want to do, right? It says here, a secret Facebook group to help labor representatives, including some Holocaust deniers, defend themselves from charges of anti-Semitism and avoid expulsion from the party was uncovered by the Daily Mail on Sunday. According to the report, the group, called Labor Party Compliance, Suspensions, Expulsions, Rejection Co-ops, was co-established and run by Labor candidate Maria Carroll, who is running for the Carmarthen East and Dineford. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's a Welsh name. In order to expose the group, the British tabloid worked with Labour Against Anti-Semitism, an organization that described itself as started by Labour members to combat what we recognize as the rise of anti-Jewish sentiment in the Labour Party, and Nasher Jew, a group aimed at investigating anti-Semitic behavior within the party. The Facebook group itself, a list of its members, and its content are not publicly available or searchable online. The paper stated that they were able to establish that Carroll personally advised alleged Holocaust deniers, as the article explained. For instance, she told Alan Bull, a candidate for Peterborough Council, who in 2015 posted an article claiming that the Holocaust was a, quote, hoax, to delete all his posts on social media. Bull was also advised by group co-founder Carolyn Ticker to demand that the party delete all the information it held on him under the Data Protection Act, and to avoid cooperating with the investigation opened by the Labor Compliance Unit until the party did so. Molly Collins, so she's telling people within the party to not cooperate with the party's internal discipline boards because they were violating the Data Protection Act. This is, I guess, a conflict between the private rules of the Labour Party and the law of the United Kingdom. But the fact is that in the UK, you can still be prosecuted for speech crimes. You can be thrown in jail for things. That's what almost happened to Count Dankula, by the way. So I don't know what their defense is based on. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, whether in the US or the UK, but it seems like a pretty weak defense in terms of the law, right? Not in terms of, again, I'll reiterate, I don't think that people should be prosecuted for things that they say, but we're talking about the real world here. Molly Collins, the former county candidate and chair of Dorset Labour, also belonged to the group. In the past, she stated on Facebook that the Holocaust was fake and that the BBC was a mouthpiece for Israel, among other things. Carol told the Mail that she was not aware of these statements by Bull and Collins, otherwise she would have condemned them. Left-wing members were being suspended from the Labour Party to prevent them from voting in the 2016 Labour leadership election. When a small number in the group took an anti-Semitic conspiratorial direction, I left it, she added. However, the report noted that Carol was still posting in the group up until May of this year. This confirms that the Labour Party has spent the last 4 years encouraging a toxic culture of anti-Jewish discrimination to flourish. According to Denny Taylor, founder and spokesman for Labour Against Anti-Semitism, responsibility must be leveled directly at Mr. Corbyn. So look, I'll read the rest of it. I have been raising concern about Jew haters not being booted out of the party for a long time. I will be writing the leadership demanding an immediate inquiry, he added. Since Jeremy Corbyn's election as Labour leader in 2015, the party has faced multiple scandals related to his personal opinions and actions, which have included calling Hamas and Hezbollah friends and stating that British Zionists lack of sense of humor, but also to anti-Semitic and extremist views rooted in the party. Earlier this year, the British Watchdog Equality and Human Rights Commission opened a formal investigation into the party. Several Labour politicians have since resigned from Labour. So let me state this. I don't think that the actions of this candidate for a parliamentary seat in Wales are personally they're not personally things that you can blame Jeremy Corbyn for, right? Because he's not responsible for the things that other members of Labour and candidates that weren't standing at the time were committing. But it shows that a lot of the people who the party did commit to fighting anti-Semitism within. Now, again, if you're an anti-Semite and you're saying, well, they're violating my civil rights, the fact is, once you join an organization, you forfeit a lot of those rights pursuant to your goals within the organization. So if you're going to say, well, I want to be a part of your organization, but I disagree vehemently with the rules and guidelines of the group, and therefore I'm going to try to avoid disciplinary measures and try to deceive the party's internal bodies. Well, look, I mean, I feel for your, I obviously don't sympathize with these people, but I sympathize with the fact that their freedom of speech is being restricted, but they should found their own group. They can found their own organization. They can call it the party of, the pro-free speech party that supports Holocaust deniers and all that, anti-vaxxers, whatever, anything that they want. Say whatever you want. You can come in here, say whatever you want, do whatever the hell you want, and you have your own organization. It's the same issue that I see with the Groypers. The Groypers, I think, are bringing a number of valid criticisms to Conservative Inc. But if they don't like Conservative Inc. and the Republican Party is holding up Conservative Inc., what are they going to do? So they're going to try to fight City Hall, and then when they lose, what happens then? Okay? What they should be doing is forming their own organization and trying to throw down roots and building institutions and members or whatever and promoting their views that way. Now, if people don't flock to that organization because most people don't happen to agree with some of those views, well, it's not the fault of the people. It's the market again. If people are attracted to a certain standpoint, they will come and support a group or organization. If they're not, then that group or organization is going to fail. So that's my stance on that. Good party name. Yeah, absolutely. You can put on a fortune cookie note. Humperdinck says, my problem is the Groypers pretend bitching about it is the solution and claim ownership of age-old problems, make their own organization. So I know that Humperdinck is a follower of Owen Benjamin, and I don't like Owen Benjamin, but, it's the same issue all the time. I think one of them started a fight with another one, Fuentes or Benjamin, and when it becomes an issue of personality as opposed to ideas, then really we're just talking about marketing again. You're not talking about whether one stream of Christianity is correct and the other one isn't. I think they might both be Catholic. It doesn't matter to me. You're not talking about whether one person. So I don't agree with either one's ideas, but the premise that you're really making this a fight about the actual principles starts to fall away when people just attack each other and all of that. It just becomes this giant popularity contest. But I'm not going to wade into that. It's a little late already for me because I have to do something else. I have to watch this game. But you're all free to comment. Also, please like and share. And subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. And subscribe to me on BitChute. I will, let's see here. Let me bring the BitChute address so that you can all click on the subscribe in BitChute and, drive me up. I don't have that many subs in BitChute, but I definitely will need more eventually. By the way, there's no live streams in BitChute. So Humperdinck says it's his views, not Owen's. Well, I mean, if you want to come on someday and give, I don't know if Humperdinck's ever been on a live stream with anyone, but if he wants to come in and I guess showcase some of his issues with either the Groypers or Owen Benjamin or whoever, I don't care. I've had arguments with Humperdinck too. But you know, again, I am a supporter of freedom of speech and freedom of expression and the Bill of Rights and civil liberties. And yet, I know that if you join an organization or group, or the group can decide, well, these are the limits of our freedom of speech here. Your freedom of speech, if you want to do it somewhere else, that's fine with us. So that's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com, as well as Subscribestar if you want to throw me a couple bucks. All of those are at Chef Leopard, and on Gab at Starscream85. I'll talk to you later.
Three, four. I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the whine, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. And if it snows, that stretch down south won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. And I need you more